Hey guys, Michael from Copper vs Glass, and today we're going to be doing something slightly different. With WWDC just around the corner, that means new iPhones. What we're going to be doing today is having a look back on previous iPhone models, and also having a look at some rumours for the next iPhone, the iPhone 6. This is the iPhone Retrospective. In 2007, Apple introduced us to the iPhone. The original iPhone was the first of its kind. It mixed a phone, an iPod, and an internet communicator. It had no physical keyboard as this was all done on screen. In fact, the entire phone interface was a touchscreen. In a time of BlackBerry and Nokia ruling the smartphone world, this was in fact revolutionary. Apple would mark the future with the iPhone, and this trend still holds up today with every flagship device having a touchscreen. There were some touchscreen phones in 2007, but iPhone didn't require a stylus for input. This was all done by something we all have, a finger. It had a 3.5-inch touchscreen with multi-touch support. Apple famously stated it was running OS X under the hood. This wasn't necessarily the case. Although there were remnants of the Mac software, the iPhone was actually running iOS, or as it was known then, iPhone OS. The iPhone came out the same time 3G was getting big, but Apple only put 2G, or what was known as Edge, in the iPhone. This leads us to the iPhone 3G. As the name states, this was the first iPhone to have 3G on board, and it made a huge difference to data speeds. The second change was the introduction of the App Store, which allowed you to purchase paid and also free apps direct from your phone. The 3G also introduced push. You no longer had to manually update contacts, calendars, and email, as this was all now done automatically. In terms of figures, the iPhone took just 80 days to sell 1 million units. The iPhone 3G done this number in just 7. Also in that time, people had downloaded over 10 million apps from Apple's new store. But as great as this was, something was missing. Speed. The iPhone 3GS was basically the same phone from the year before, but faster, and at the time it was a lot faster. Apple increased the camera from 2 megapixels to 3 megapixels and also introduced video. The iPhone 3GS also had some software improvements with iPhone OS 3. It gave you the opportunity to send multimedia messages, in-app purchases, and introduced us to a very minor feature called copy and paste. Some people did not like the 3GS, as it had the same design as the 3G. This trend would continue to this day. Apple then made the phone that changed everything, and they introduced us to the iPhone 4. The iPhone 4 was a marvel at the time. The back and front glass and the stainless steel outer rim made this the best looking smartphone ever. There was a lot of controversy around this phone as it was leaked massively by Gizmodo after an Apple engineer left a prototype in a bar. And let's not forget Antennagate, where there were so many issues with the antennas on the phone's release. But by far the best thing about this phone was the screen. It stayed at the familiar 3.5 inches, but Apple managed to cram 326 pixels per inch with a resolution of 960 by 640. The name Retina was given because the resolution of the screen was higher than what the actual human eye could see, from a certain distance that is. The iPhone 4 introduced a front-facing camera, and the word selfie started making the rounds. This front-facing camera also made it possible for FaceTime to be introduced in the OS. The OS of the phone was also now known as iOS, which was introduced with the iPad that very same year. The rear camera could now shoot 720p video and could take 8 megapixel photos. Apple was on top after the iPhone 4 came out. So now what? As tradition goes, the next phone was the iPhone 4S. It is still unknown whether the S in the name stood for speed, as it did with the 3GS, or if it stands for Siri, the new personal assistant that came bundled with the iPhone 4S. There was issues with iPhone colours in the past, so it was good to see Apple offering both the black and white models from launch day. Like the 3GS before it, the 4S kept the same form factor as the last phone, the iPhone 4. But again, in terms of the S in the name, the signal was now massively improved, offering the less commonly known 4G connectivity. The camera's also got some minor improvements, offering 1080p video and a backside illuminated sensor to let in more light for low light photography. But people had their hands on phones like the Galaxy S2 and HTC phones at this point with bigger screens, so Apple had to step up their game and also their screen size. Apple then introduced the world to the iPhone 5, one of the most leaked phones of all time. They had increased the screen size from 3.5 inches to 4 inches. This was only increased vertically, offering a 5th row of apps. Apple done this so you could easily use the phone and continue to use it in one hand. This also was the phone that introduced iOS 6, and people were not happy. the great Google Maps had been replaced by Apple's own maps, which didn't even come close to the now deceased Google Maps. There were some directions that weren't that great, a flyover option that was great to look at but had no use whatsoever. There were also improvements to the camera, offering shooting modes like panorama, and also some other options like HDR. iCloud also gave iPhone users a confusing way to save photos, but a more convenient way to save contacts and calendar events to the Mac. But there were now cheaper phones on the market, and Apple couldn't ignore this. So they introduced the iPhone 5C. Johnny Ive famously stated that this phone was unapologetically plastic, but people didn't necessarily agree. The phone shipped with iOS 7, which was Apple's latest operating system, but with its bright colours and large amounts of transparency, you either love or hate this operating system. The 5C was the iPhone 5, but in a plastic shell. This wasn't necessarily a bad thing, as the iPhone 5 was a great phone, but starting at £469 for 16GB, it couldn't compete with offerings from the likes of Google and the Nexus 4. Even with the drop in price and capacity to 8GB for £429, there was something else holding back on sales. And it was kind of Apple's fault. You see, this was the first year that Apple introduced two smartphones. When the iPhone 5C came out, they also introduced the 5S. This was the premium big brother to the 5C, and to be honest, it was the phone that everyone wanted. For starters, it had a fingerprint sensor that worked surprisingly well, a slightly changed design from the iPhone 5, and some great software improvements with the camera. You could now shoot 720p video at 120 frames per second, and it looked really good. The slow motion effect was incredibly good. The iPhone 5S is always top in camera phone tests, and although the megapixel count was nowhere near the Nokia's 41 megapixels, it was still decent at 8. This allowed for super fast shots and burst mode that phones today can't match. You may have also heard that it comes in gold, but please, and for the sake of everybody else, get it in space grey. And that takes us up to where we are today. There's a load of rumours happening around WWDC and around the iPhone 6, so what we're going to be doing now is taking a look at what I think the iPhone 6 is going to have. And we're also going to be borrowing some clips from some great YouTubers out there, giving you guys a first look at what the iPhone 6 may actually look like, and also having a sneak peek at a great concept for iOS 8. Nothing is set in stone for the iPhone 6, but based on leaks, blueprints, and also some mock-ups, it's clear Apple's going big with the next iPhone. Not Galaxy Note big, but at least 4.7 inches. This would be the biggest iPhone to date, but are people ready for that, or do they want the great premium small package that Apple is known for? Well, with rumours of another iPhone this year coming in at 5.5 inches, it looks like you won't have any choice but to go big if you want the latest from Apple. The display will most likely be 1704 by 960, have the fingerprint sensor from the iPhone 5S, and be a completely new design. I say new, but if you have Apple's 5th generation iPod Touch, you'll know exactly what you're getting into. The iPhone 6 from the leaks looks like a mixture of the HTC One M7 and the 5th generation iPod. Now this may not be the final design or even the design at all, but it's all we have right now, and it does actually look quite nice with curved edges and a smooth back with no glass like on previous models. The bezels around the screen could slim down a bit and the camera not stick out so much, but overall it does look good. Rumours also point to improvements with the camera and video capabilities, maybe being able to shoot in 4K video and upping the resolution of the camera from 8 megapixels to around maybe 10 to 13. It will also have Apple's latest processor, and that's pretty much it for the design. The WWDC banner states that we will see iOS at June's event, but nothing's been leaked regarding this apart from some screenshots of some new apps and also some redesigns of some older ones. This here is a video of a concept of one man's vision for iOS 8, and it includes widgets but done in a way that I could see Apple using. The design looks the same as it did with iOS 7, but with loads of new features, and I think with the increase in the screen size, Apple needs to change iOS to fit the bigger screen and not just have a blown up version for the new screen. iOS is a nice operating system, but it is definitely getting old with the way it looks and just in general the design. Hey guys, thanks very much for watching that video, and if you did enjoy the content, be sure to leave a thumbs up down below. If you guys have got any other retrospectives you want us to have a look at, then be sure to leave those down in the comments and we will do the best to see what we can do for you guys. A big shout out goes to MKBHD, Your Average Consumer, Danny Wignett and also Detroit Borg for letting me borrow some of their iPhone 6 video footage, and I will also leave some video links in the description below so you can go and check out those guys' videos, and also any other previous iPhone videos that we've done here at Copper vs Glass will be linked down in the description as well. I'm Michael from Copper vs Glass, thanks very much for watching and I will catch you guys in the next video.